You might not remember him, but, he was a true knight.
That is how Sir Duncan the Tall describes the man buried in the dirt beneath his feet. He tells us that Sir Arlen of Pennytree had a peaceable nature, that he was quiet, humble, a veteran of 100 wars who was an enemy to none. As Dunk speaks these words, his voice trembles with the specific kind of reverence we reserve for the dead. We want to believe him. The show wants us to believe him. We want to believe that in Westeros, a continent defined by backstabbing politics and fire-breathing monsters, there was at least one good man. A man who, as Dunk says, wanted for nothing but the open air and a fire to warm his feet at. But the camera tells a different story. While Dunk paints a portrait of chivalric perfection, the editors of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms are busy dismantling it before our eyes. We don't see a peaceable nature. We see a drunkard. We see a man brawling in the mud. We see a hedge knight relieving himself with what can only be described as aggressive confidence. This dissonance, the gap between the story Dunk tells himself and the reality we are shown, is not just a joke. It is the thesis statement of the entire series. Welcome to episode 2, titled Hard Salt Beef. On the surface, this is a transitional episode. It's about Dunk trying to find a lord to vouch for him so he can enter the Ashford tourney. It's about the introduction of the Targaryen princes. But if you look closer, past the jousting and the pageantry, this episode is doing something far more complex. It is deconstructing the myth of the true knight. For the last week, the internet has been debating the tone of this show. Is it too light? Is it too colourful? Westeros is supposed to be grim and grey, right? But that criticism misses the point entirely. The brightness is the trap. Episode 2 bombards us with the aesthetic of high fantasy. We see the pavilion tents of House Tully and House Baratheon rippling in the wind like something out of a storybook. The colours are saturated. The armour shines. It looks like a paradise. But then we cut to Dunk, and suddenly we aren't in a storybook anymore. We are in a survival story. The episode title, Hard Salt Beef, isn't just a random reference. It is a class signifier. While the lords of Westeros are feasting in those colourful tents, Dunk is chewing on cured meat so tough it hurts his jaw. Hard salt beef is the fuel of the poor. It is tough, plain, and unglamorous. And that is exactly what Sir Arlen's legacy is. This episode does an incredible job of visualising Dunk's imposter syndrome. He isn't just a guy who lost his boss. He is a man who has walked into a room he isn't supposed to be in. He is wandering a tourney ground surrounded by the greatest lords in Westeros, the Tyrells, the Baratheons, the Tullys, and he is realising that the gap between him and them isn't just about money. It's about existence. He tries to lean on Arlen's legacy to bridge that gap.
House Tyrell. Sir Erlen often spoke of his time in your service as his very finest. He said it was you, my lord, who told him that a hedge knight was the bridge between lords and the small folk.
He approaches Lord Leo Tyrell, expecting a warm welcome. In Dunk's mind, the bond between knights is sacred. He thinks Leo will remember Arlen the way he remembers Arlen. But watch the visual details here. When we meet Lord Leo, the show zooms in on his mouth. His teeth are stained red. That's sourleaf, a Westerosi narcotic. It's a gritty, ugly detail in a beautiful world. Tyrell isn't a noble hero. He's a bored, drug-chewing politician who looks at Dunk with total indifference.
I know him not, man.
He doesn't remember Sir Arlen. Why would he? To men like Tyrell, men like Arlen are just furniture. They are the background extras in the movie of his life. And that leads to the most brutal line of the episode. When Egg says,
"Well, he can't have been a very good one if no one remembers him,"
he isn't just being a brat. He is voicing Dunk's deepest fear, that a life lived quietly is a life wasted, that without the songs and the glory, goodness doesn't count. This fear, the fear of being hard salt beef in a world of cakes and wine, drives everything that happens next. Today, we are going to dive deep into the 3 layers of this episode to understand how Dunk survives this identity crisis. First, we'll look at the psychology of Dunk and Egg, and how their relationship is built on a shared desperation to escape who they really are. Second, we'll examine the political strategy, specifically the shadow of the Blackfyre Rebellion that hangs over every interaction in this episode, a detail most casual viewers completely missed. And finally, we will decode the symbolism, specifically how the director films the jousting scenes to expose the violence hidden inside the pageantry. Welcome back to Deepcut, Let's dig in. If the introduction was about the lie of the true knight, the rest of the episode is about the cost of maintaining that lie. This brings us to our first core pillar, the psychology of the imposter. George R.R. Martin loves to write about cripples, bastards, and broken things. But in Dunk, he gives us something else, a fraud, or at least a man who terrifyingly believes he is one. Throughout episode 2, the camera constantly frames Dunk in isolation. When he walks through the Ashford Meadows, he isn't just a poor man in a rich man's world, he is an anomaly. This is where the episode's title, Hard Salt Beef, stops being a food reference and starts being a psychological state. Dunk is chewing on the tough reality that he has no place here. He is trying to vouch for a dead man, Sir Arlen, whom nobody remembers. And why should they? Arlen wasn't a hero, he was a survivor. But Dunk needs Arlen to be a hero, because if Arlen was just a shit knight, as Egg so eloquently puts it, then what does that make Dunk? A squire to a failure?
Was he a shit knight?
This is the psychological crux of the episode. Dunk isn't just fighting for entry into a tournament, he is fighting to retroactive validate his entire existence. Watch the scene with Lord Leo Tyrell again. This is a masterclass in visual storytelling. Dunk approaches the Lord of Highgarden, one of the most powerful men in the realm. In his head, Dunk is expecting a scene from a song, the benevolent lord recognizing the humble warrior. Instead, he gets a face full of red teeth. The show makes a specific point to show us these stains. It's sourleaf, a mild narcotic in Westeros. It's a small, gritty detail that shatters the fantasy. Tyrell isn't a figure of romance. He's a bored, drug-chewing politician who barely looks at Dunk. The rejection here is total. And notice how Dunk takes it. He doesn't get angry, he apologizes. This is the imposter syndrome taking the wheel. He retreats immediately because, deep down, he agrees with them. He thinks he is trash. But while Dunk is trying to put on a mask of nobility, Egg is trying to tear his off. The dynamic between these two is the engine of the show, but episode 2 flips the script.
You were a knight of the realm, sir. You can say fuck their permission, rise into the list, call out Longthorn Tyrell, and turn his arsehole into a lance hole.
Usually, the mentor teaches the student. Here, the student is the one explaining the world to the mentor. Egg is the deep-cut analyst within the show itself. He knows the heraldry, he knows the lineage, he knows that Prince Valar is mediocre, and that the Blackfyre Rebellion was complicated. Why is Egg so cynical? Because he has seen behind the curtain. Dunk looks at the Targaryen tent and sees gods. Egg looks at it and sees his annoying family. This creates a fascinating psychological irony. Dunk is a peasant pretending to be a knight to gain honor. Egg is a prince pretending to be a peasant to escape it. They are running in opposite directions, colliding in the middle. And the tragedy is that Egg, the boy, sees the truth clearly. He can't have been a very good knight if no one remembers him. It's brutal logic. It cuts through Dunk's romanticism like a knife.
If I win, I'll come back and buy you again.
This leads us to the darkest psychological moment of the episode, the temptation to quit. Most fantasy heroes have a moment of doubt, but Dunk's doubt is financial, it's practical, it's hard salt beef. He considers selling everything, he considers giving up. And this is where the show quietly reconstructs the heroism it just deconstructed. Dunk doesn't stay because he suddenly proves he's a great warrior. He stays because of a stubborn, irrational refusal to let Arlen be forgotten. He chooses to live the lie until it becomes the truth. Psychologically, this is the birth of Sir Duncan the Tall, not on the battlefield, but in the decision to withstand the humiliation of being a nobody. But while Dunk is fighting his internal battle, a much larger, darker shadow is moving over the tournament grounds. A shadow cast by a rebellion that supposedly ended 13 years ago. Which brings us to part 3, the politics of ghost hunting. Because if you thought this was just a sports movie with lances, you missed the civil war brewing in the background. While Dunk is fighting his own personal battle for recognition, the Targaryens are fighting a war that everyone else thinks ended 13 years ago. This brings us to our second pillar, the politics of ghost hunting. If you are a show-only watcher, the arrival of the Targaryen princes at Ashford probably just looked like the royals have arrived. But if you look at the family tree, you realise that this isn't a family reunion, it's a manhunt. Prince Maekar isn't at Ashford for the jousting, he is here because he has lost his sons. We know that Egg, Prince Aegon, is with Dunk, But there is a crucial detail hidden in the previous episode. The other missing son, Prince Daeron, was actually the drunk man Dunk met at the inn back in episode 1. This context changes everything about Maekar's behaviour. When he looks at the crowd, he isn't looking for champions, he is looking for runaways. He is a father who has lost control of his own lineage, and in Westeros, a lost prince is a political ticking time bomb. Why is this so dangerous? Because of the B word that hangs over this entire series, Blackfyre. Episode 2 drops subtle hints about the Blackfyre Rebellion, the civil war that tore the realm apart just over a decade ago.
I have his sword and shield.
Dunk mentions that Sir Arlen fought at the Battle of the Redgrass Field. He mentions that Arlen's nephew, Roger, died there. For Dunk, this is a sad memory, but for the Targaryens, it is a living threat. Look at Egg.
Die! Do you yield, Blackfyre bastard? Ah, yeah!
He plays at fighting Blackfyres in the woods. To him, it's a game. But for his father, Maekar, and his uncle Baelor, the fear of a second rebellion is real. This recontextualizes the missing princes plot. If a Targaryen prince goes missing, he doesn't just run away. He could be kidnapped. He could be used as a figurehead for a new rebellion. Maekar's anger in this episode isn't just bad parenting. It is the paranoia of a dynasty that knows its hold on power is slippery. This political tension bleeds into the family dynamic. There is a massive visual difference between Baelor Breakspear and Maekar. Baelor is the heir. He is popular. He is the perfect knight. Maekar is the younger brother, the Stannis Baratheon of his generation, grumpy, overshadowed, and desperate to prove his sons are worthy. When Maekar's sons run away, it's not just a family embarrassment, it's a political disaster that makes Maekar look incompetent compared to his perfect brother. This insecurity is what drives the plot forward. It's why Maekar is so aggressive. He feels the weight of the Blackfyre legacy on his neck. So we have Dunk, the imposter knight, trying to enter a system that is paranoid about imposters. It is a powder keg waiting for a match. And the match is lit not by a sword, but by a symbol. Which brings us to our final and most visual pillar, the deconstruction of the Joust. We have talked about the lies we tell ourselves and the political ghosts haunting the edges of the frame. But now we need to talk about the violence itself. This brings us to our final pillar, the symbolism of the joust. In most medieval movies, the joust is a sport. It is clean, honourable and exciting. In A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the joust is a car crash. Watch Dunk's face during the tournament. He isn't cheering, he is having a panic attack. The cinematography here is doing something very specific. It is stripping away the romance of knighthood to show the brutality underneath. When Lord Medgar Tully rides, he doesn't just wave to the crowd, he bites the head off a fish, the sigil of his own house. It is a grotesque, performative act of dominance. It is visually rich, but let's go deeper. It is a symbol of how these lords consume their own identities for applause. They are performers in a violent circus. And then there is the hard salt beef. Throughout the episode, we see Dunk eating this tough, plain food. It is the unglamorous fuel of his life. But by the end of the episode, the meaning of the beef changes. In the beginning, the beef represented his poverty. By the end, it represents his resilience. Dunk has been rejected by the lords. He has been mocked by his own squire. He has been terrified by the violence of the joust. But he is still here. He is still eating. He is still surviving. The episode ends not with a victory, but with an acceptance. Dunk accepts that he is not a true knight in the way the songs describe. He is just a man trying to do good in a world that rewards bad behavior. So, what is the hidden meaning of episode 2? It is a story about the difference between reputation and character. Sir Arlen had no reputation. He died in a ditch, forgotten by the lords he served. Prince Maekar has a terrifying reputation, but he is a man consumed by insecurity. Lord Tyrell has a glorious reputation, but he is a drug-addled cynic. And then there is Dunk. Dunk, who ends the episode exactly where he started, with nothing. No voucher, no money, no glory. But he has Egg, and he has the truth.
His name was Sir Arlen of Pennytree, and I am his legacy.
He realizes that Sir Arlen was a true knight, not because he won jousts, but because he was kind to a gutter rat from Flea Bottom. The deep cut of this episode is that legacy isn't about statues or songs. It's about the one person who remembers you when you're gone. Dunk might be a liar. He might be an imposter, but in a kingdom of monsters, a good man is the rarest thing of all. This has been Deepcut. If you want to understand why the Trial of Seven in the next episode is the most important legal event in Westerosi history, subscribe and hit the bell, because the true trial hasn't even started yet.